Hello, I'm Jeremy, and today we're going to take a look at the 28th game in my series on the Spiel de Jahres, or German Game of the Year award winners. And this is the 2015 winner of the award, and that is Colt Express. And this is a game that's going to play in about 30 to 40 minutes from 2 to 6 players. The box says ages 10 and up, but I think younger players would definitely be able to play it, especially if they had some adults guiding them. And this is going to be a pretty raucous, Wild Wild West themed game in which players are going to be controlling cowboys who are trying to loot a train. The game has some terrific 3D components, and I think I'll just let them speak for themselves. Let me take a minute to show you how the game plays, and then I will come back and give you my thoughts on it. So here I've set up a game of Colt Express for 4 players. The game plays from 2 to 6 players, with 2 players using a team variant, where players will control more than one robber. But essentially this is going to be a game where each player is going to be controlling one of these bank robber figures. As you can see, they're on the last 2 cars of the train, trying to steal the most loot by the end of 6 rounds when the train pulls into a station. So first of all, you can see that this game has a very impressive board, which you can see here is 3D, and each one of these it represents a train, and each one of these train cars has 2 levels, and they're nicely illustrated both inside. And I'm not sure how well you could see it here, but within those train cars are some loot tokens, and the object of the game is essentially going to be to collect those loot tokens. And the way that players are going to be able to do that is by programming their movements over the course of the game using cards. So I'm going to show you the so-called expert version of the game, which is, I think, the preferred way to play. It just adds slightly more strategic decision making in the game. So each player is going to get a few things. They're going to get a card and a player sheet showing them a character, and each character is going to have a special ability. They'll get a deck full of these bullet cards. You can see that they show how many bullets you have left to shoot, and that decreases over the course of the game. And then finally, they'll get a deck of action cards, and these are going to give you the various actions that you could do during your turn. So each player will get one of those, and they'll also get a figure to control on the board itself. So players are going to draw 6 cards into their hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then each round we're going to flip up one of these cards, which basically, depending on the number of players, there's a different deck, but there's going to be 5 normal ones used and then 1 end game one used that represents pulling into the station. And these are going to basically determine how many actions players get to do during their turn, and also sometimes special actions that will happen. So for example, if we drew this card here, we could see that there's basically space for 5 actions over the course of the turn, and there's going to be basically 2 of them that are going to be played in secret. That's what that means. It means you're basically in a train tunnel and the lights go out and you're moving in secret. So in turn order, each player is going to take a look at their cards and determine what they want to do based on the cards that they have. So again, each player gets 5 cards at the start of the turn. And so let me just explain what the various cards are. So this one here means to move left or right along the train or along the roof of the train, just 1 car, and you can pick the direction when it comes time to actually execute the card. This one here, in the front of the train over here, there's a yellow marshal figure, which will basically harm players if he captures them, and that allows you to move the marshal. This is a punch, which allows you to basically hit a player who's in the same space as you, and whenever you punch them, you'll get to move them 1 train car over, or 1 top of the train car over, and you get to pick the direction of that. Unless you're in the caboose, you have to move them toward the front of the train, and in the engine you have to move them toward the back of the train. This is simply pick up a loot token on the space where you're at, and when you're punched you also drop a loot token. And then this is to shoot. So if you shoot your gun, you will, on the train, be able to shoot up to 1 space away in either direction. But if you're on the roof, let's say this character was on the roof and this character was all the way over here on the roof, you would be able to shoot all the way down until you hit a character. So for example, if this player was here and this player was here, they could not target the red player. They would be blocked by this blue player. They could only target the blue player. So it's just, you could target line of sight, essentially. So those are the action cards. I believe I've got them all. Let me just double check. Yeah, these are just... Oh, the last one is actually how you get onto the roof. So it's a climb the ladder card, and you can see here it allows you either climb up or climb down. So basically move your character from inside a train car up to the roof or vice versa. So the way that this is going to work is that players are going to play cards, like I said, as depicted on this card, in order to execute their action. So for example, this player here, starting here, might choose to just immediately move cars. And they'll play that face up so that other players will be able to see it. And then this player, for example, they might choose to just pick up loot. So they would just play that card face up. This player, seeing that that player has vacated, might choose then to pick up the loot that's there. And this player might then choose to punch the player who just picked up loot. So this will continue on, and again, the next round has a train, so players are going to play their cars, but play them face down. So let's say this player does this player does this player does, well, this player does this, and over here I have the fourth player. I'm not sure that's in view, but let's just say we've done that, and we've done all 5 rounds. But I'll just show you now how this would resolve. So after every player has played all their cards for the round, you'll flip them over so that the first one played is now on top. And then there's going to be a resolution phase, and that will also go in turn order, 1 card at a time, with players executing their actions. So let's see what we've got. So here we have the white player is going to move trains. They're in the back, so they can only move 1 forward. Then that would go to their discard. Then let's see, this player is going to pick up loot. So they could take any of those loot tokens that are there. And each of these loot tokens, there's 3 types. There are diamonds, which are always, I think, going to be worth 500. There are money bags, which are worth a variable amount. You don't know until you pick them up. And then the marshal up there in the front of the car, he's guarding a briefcase. And that's going to be worth, I think, $1,000. So this guy might take the $500 as his action. This guy's action would be to pick up loot. And this guy over here, let's see, he has chosen to punch. So he could pick any of these players who is in there and pick a direction for them to fly in. So let's just say, since this guy picked up loot, he picks the punches the red guy, so he falls over and he'll drop the loot that he had picked up. So that would be 1 round, and now the players would reveal their second card that they played. And for example, this character here, white character, is just going to climb. So you can see here he's climbing. The red figure, he is picking up loot again, so maybe he'll take another diamond to replace the one he lost. The blue figure is now moving. And something I should mention is that when you move inside the trains, you can only move 1 space, but if you moved on the top of the train, you can move up to 3 spaces. So you do have slightly better mobility on the top of the train. And then finally, this character here, he is now going to move. So maybe he would just move over here with this figure. So this will go until all players have played all 5 of their cards, and they will be, interacting with each other, messing up each other's plans, and then they will have some cards into their discard. If a player gets shot, nobody actually picked the shooting card, but if a player gets shot, let's say the white player shoots somebody successfully, he would then put this white bullet card into that player's discard. And so he'd be down a bullet, but then this player will have this card into their discard. Whenever you run out of cards in your draw pile, in order to draw back up to your 6 cards for the start of the round, you'll have to shuffle cards. If you draw any bullet cards, you can just discard those right away. Those won't be useful. So if you get shot too many times, you'll have fewer actions during a turn. So there are just a few more things to explain. If a player ever moves into the same space as the marshal card or figure, the marshal will just move back and forth, like I said, in the train as players play their marshal cards. So let's say the marshal would move into here. these two figures would immediately have to move. They scamper off to the top of the train, and they would each take a bullet card. There's a deck of martial bullet cards, and add that to their discard pile. It would be as if they'd gotten shot. Secondly, each character will have a special power. Some of those are definitely better than others. So this character, for example, he draws 7 cards each turn, whereas this character could play an extra card face down as if they were going through a tunnel. But each character will have a special ability. And finally, the game, it plays over 6 rounds. And like I said, each round has the potential to have something change up. So for example, here you would play 1 card, then you would play 2 cards successively, and then 1 card again. So that's just a little bit of a variety. This would happen here, so you'd play your 4 cards, and this would take effect. And basically, this means that that all figures who are in the the engine would have to move to the caboose. This one here, it means that the marshal's going to move one direction. Or I'm sorry, no. This one is actually the marshal's going to shoot any bandits who are on the roof of his car. So he'll shoot up through and hit bandits. And for example, this one here, what does that mean? That is... every bandit who's inside of a car is going to take a bullet card. So various random things will happen that you have to plan for over the course of a round. And then the last turn of the game, there's going to be one last thing. Sometimes it'll affect the scoring. In this case, this one is each bandit who's alone on a spot with a token would be able to grab a token for a free action. So that would be a good thing. So after you've played through all those rounds and you've played through that final round, bandits are essentially going to tally up the money that they had. Any bandit who's basically played all their cards, or the bandit that's played the most cards, will be able to flip over their character card to get a $1,000 bonus, and whoever has the most money at the end of that will be the winner. Alright, so that is Colt Express, and this is the most recent winner of the Spiel des Jahres at the time that I'm recording this video, but so I will say that I've only played it about 3 times so far, but every time I've played it, I've had a blast, and it's a game that I think invites some sort of skepticism just because it's so lavishly produced. But once you start playing it, and once you see that those cards come up and plans not go according to plan, things get really fun really fast. The game is not something that I feel obligated to pull out every time I'm trying to play a board game. It definitely has some novelty factor in it, and it's not something that I think you're going to want to play over and over again within the same game session. But for what it is, which is essentially a novelty, it's really terrific. It plays better with more players, so closer to 6 players, I think, the better. I have not yet tried the 2-player team variant where you're controlling 2 figures, but I think that could be potentially more strategic and more interesting. But with more players, this is definitely a chaotic game. It's one where you have to just be more caught up in the experience of it than trying to win. And I think if approached with the right attitude, it's terrific. Definitely have some complaints about the game as a strategy game, but I don't think it's trying to be that. For example, I think that the character powers do not seem to be particularly balanced at all. There's one character who, if you're in the same space as her, she could deflect attacks to other players, and meanwhile another character just gets an extra card in his hand, and that does not seem to be in any way, shape, or form particularly balanced. Still, this is a really well designed game. It's interesting when you play it, like to watch players get an early lead and get a lot of loot, and then suddenly by the end of the second or third round, they're the target and everybody's shooting them, beating up on them, and they're all but incapacitated for the final rounds of the game. So there's a little bit of strategy insofar as you might want to fly under the radar for a while before you make your grab at the big loot. Also, trying to manipulate an opening to get the briefcase from the marshal takes a lot of planning. So I won't say that there's no planning in this game whatsoever, but thinking of it as a strategy game is kind of against the spirit of this game. This is more almost a party game than anything. And it's a really great introduction to games that use program movement. There's a lot of games, most famously Robo Rally, there's Lords of Zidit, whatever. Lots of great strategy games that use this. And this is definitely more of a lighter family game. And I think that, any parent that has kids and wants to play a game with their kids, this would be terrific. That's why it's kind of crazy to me that they put 10 and up on the box, because it's such a perfect kids game. But in all, I think that it's very approachable. Most of the cards, or all the cards, are simply iconography, so there's no real reading required, just some planning. And if somebody does poorly at planning, that just makes the game more enjoyable, I think, for everyone. So all in all, I think Colt Express is a worthy winner of the award and a terrific family game. So those are my thoughts on Colt Express. Thanks for watching.